differential gear. So now step 4, I'm going to get all these parts. And we're going to attach the inner gear. Okay guys, last we left off, we did the transfer case and where to put the motor. So now today we're going to go to step 5. So step 5 is actually installing part of the rear end, so we can actually install the transfer case on the rear. So I did get some screws ready, so it tells you which screws to get. So 5 of the short one, which are the 10mm, and then 2 long ones. What I've done to make it easier and faster, I actually put the screws in order. So these are the 10mm, these are the 12. So it's going to be quicker for me to grab them, and here are my long ones. So when I go to my next step after that, I'll be ready for the other screws that I need to get. So I did cut out all the parts off the tree, so you wouldn't have to see me do that. What's interesting is that on the C part, which are the arms, the A arms for the rear, these are like a rubber finish. They're plastic, but kind of a rubber. So when you're actually cutting it off the tree with your side snip, it does not make the same sound. This is softer, and they do that on purpose using different material because they do give a little bit more. So when you're bending and with articulation and things like that, or hitting a tree or hitting something, they won't break it as easily as the hard plastic. But bear in mind, Tamiyas are pretty tough. They can take a beating. So let's get going. So on the instruction, it actually tells you, and if you follow them very carefully, and I say very carefully because you do have to look at the drawing and see you have a notch on this side but the other side doesn't. You actually see it on the drawing. So when you're putting them together, put your piece beside it like that, and just put your piece the same way like that. It makes it easier for you just to put it together and to make sure that you do have it on the right side. So when you insert them together, it looks just like the picture. I can do the other side. And it looks like the picture on the other side. Voila! So I'll put the 2 small screws. So for this I need some 10mm. So I need 4 of them. So I'll screw those and I'll be right back. Okay, I've taken the 2 screws and I've put the 2 screws in there. So I'm all ready for that. Now the next step is to actually take the top part, which is this little part, and put it on the chassis. And you just follow the pictures, because you can actually put them backward, but just be careful. Follow the pictures and you'll do just fine. Now let's screw this puppy. Okay, now that the screw is put onto the top piece, we got to put the A-arms and then use these long screws. These screws, the thread is actually right here at the edge, and there's nothing else. So this helps for the A-arm to actually go up and down. There is no need to put grease in here, so there's no need to put grease, but you can if you want. But I don't, because grease does collect dirt. So if you do put grease here or in there, dirt will get there and then it will jam. It's just gonna not work anymore or not flex. So that's not good. So this is pretty easy to screw in there, because the plastic is, like I mentioned, a soft plastic. So screw it till it actually stops and don't bring it in there anymore. Oh, I just did a mistake just by talking. I actually put the A-arm backward. That's what happens when you talk and not careful at what you do. Good thing I actually noticed this now before putting the transfer case. and all the stuff, because it makes it a little harder to take that long screw out. Now it looks like the picture. Poor little Herbie. He wouldn't have worked properly. There we go, that's one. And let's put the other one. I won't bore you with the next one. There we go, number 5 is done. So it looks just like the picture. Now the next step is to put the transfer case on to the rear chassis part. And we need to get these screws. Okay, for the next step, you need to sandwich, and it does tell you to loosen the screws a little bit, but you need to sandwich the rear guard. So you got to open it up and squeeze that in here, and then just close the door. Now we're going to put some screws here. I'm going to put some screws here on the bottom and some on top, just like they mentioned here. So let me put some screws. I'll be right back. Okay, there we go. All installed. Put the 5 screws all together. Even had to put some little tiny piece of plastic on top here, which I don't know for what now, but we'll find out later. They told me to put it on, so I will. So the next step is actually installing the motor. So let me get a couple parts together. Okay, the next step is kind of interesting. They do something special here, especially to put the pinion on. They have a little cap, and that cap is kind of cool the way it works. So the first thing you have to do when you get the motor, it actually has a black rubber kind of hose that's on it, so you got to remove that. Once you've removed it, first step is you do have to put the gasket. They give you a little gasket, so best thing to do is just install it, line it up with the holes, and you'll be good. Okay, so now we're going to install the pinion gear, and here's the set screw. So before you install this set screw, don't forget that you do have to put some Loctite. So the blue one is the best one for this, because the blue one you can actually remove. If you get some red Loctite, you might run into issues that you can't take it off later. So what you do is you just put a small little dot of Loctite and just put it on there. Keep in mind this is a 2-piece of very thin aluminum, so don't over torque for nothing. You don't need to. So I just insert it. I put the screw where the slot is, and I can actually push it all the way in, doesn't matter for now. But when you start screwing, you got to make sure that you're screwing directly onto the flat edge. Once you know you're there, you can back it off just a little bit so you can actually move it forward and backward. Now this is where it's interesting what they've done, is that they want you to put this cap on, and then you have your screw there that you actually see where the pinion is. You just enter, and then you push it out all the way to the top. And that is going to give you the perfect distance that sets how far this is set so that it's going to grab directly. So that's a perfect fit for this car. So that's pretty ingenious to come out with a cap like that actually sets your pinion exactly the right depth, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay, the next step is to actually install the motor onto the car. So it does says that we have a 20-tooth pinion, and it does say on it that it was written 20-tooth on the other side. So it is a 20-tooth. So what's interesting is for the perfect setting for the mesh, you just follow the holes. So if you put a 16-tooth pinion, 18-tooth pinion, or 20-tooth pinion. So we have the 20, so we're going to install it on the 20. So the screws are going to go one right there in the center and the other one right across on that side. So let's insert the screws, the long screws in there, and like that we can't do a mistake and everything's going to be fine. So the easiest way for me to actually do that is I do put the 2 screws in there right away, and you can actually see the screws pop out on this side. So you can actually see them, that they're popping out. So as you enter the motor, you'll just line up and you will see on an angle just where that screw actually came out because I pushed it. But you will see it and it will fall just right in place. And then you just turn your motor a little bit and it falls in place, and then you can just screw it in there. There we go, the motor's in there. So it doesn't matter how you put it. Like right now I got my 2 wires parallel to the car. You could have the motor, the 2 wires this way. It does not matter because there's different holes you can use on the motor. So I just ended up using these, and that's just fine. I'll bend these later and hide them to make sure they don't interfere with anything. So now the next step is actually to install these 2 small pieces here. I believe these are for the shocks. 2 on each side. Well, 1 on each side. So I'll just install those real quick. So there we go, all installed. Shock towers are there. And the rear bottom plate is there. And my 2 A-arms. So today we went through step 5, 6, 7, and 8. Next time we'll put the chassis, the front chassis on. Step 9. And yes, we are going to put M06L because we need the long chassis.